Hello, I'm Emma-Louise Coffey and you're welcome to The Dairy Edge, the Teagasc Dairy podcast. We're bringing you the latest information, insights and opinion to improve dairy farm performance. On this week's show, I speak to regional Grass 10 champion Ed Payne about his family's decision to enter the dairy industry and how the team at Hilltop Dairies are hitting key production targets.
A bit of background on the farm. My father and my uncle would have farmed in partnership all their lives, and my cousin will say then took over that farm, and he made the decision to go dairying, and then so that was nearly a joint effort between the two. I suppose a new enterprise for me to return home to was something new and something fresh that myself and my father could both learn together. We were looking for something, an enterprise that could stand on its own 2 feet. This farm traditionally would have been beef and sheep, had a good single farm payment or whatever else. That was looking challenged at the time. So we said that we wanted something that could stand on its own 2 feet apart from that. So that was main couple of reasons, Emma-Louise.
And in terms of the steps preparing to start dairy farming, what did you do?
Yeah. So personally, I was studying away at the time. I was in Dundee studying business studies at the time. So I got a job there working on a very high input 200 cow farm there. That was sort of in order to get used to milking cows, to see do they actually like the process, do they like the farming. Before we started milking on our own farm, the spring beforehand, I worked with a very good grass-based farmer here in Ireland, down in Waterford, where I worked a spring there alongside his manager there, where I learned a lot about grass-based system here in Ireland and how that worked. So I suppose those 2 jobs were really my own personal experience into dairying, and just to make sure that I did like the whole process or the enterprise that we were getting into.
And I guess, were those farms what dictated or informed your decisions around your production system, starting off?
Yeah, they certainly did. And I suppose also, like, we knew we had an asset. We had a block of land all in one block of good grass growing farms. So like we were always going to lean towards the more grass-based system. That was, and the advice coming from Teagasc at the time, whatever else was to go that way. To working on the farm in Waterford, I saw the pros and cons. The farm was very open there and very, fit for communication. So I could see that the system was going to be something I could run on the home farm. Yeah.
And then you started milking in 2011. Can you talk us through the evolution from the first milking on the farm to where you are today?
So I suppose at the time, I remember the first couple of milkings. My father would have never milked in his life, and it was a whole new process for the farm. And after a couple of milkings, my father came to me and said, geez, you're actually quite good at this, and it might be something that might work or whatever. And it was from there then, I suppose, we milked 140 heifers the first year. And then it was just a natural progression from there on. We just grew the herd and kept going. Like it was sort of it wasn't easy at times, and we've had our challenges over the time, but we a steep learning curve is the best way. I suppose we got thrown in at the deep end. We had great support through Teagasc and other people around us, great help, great mentors locally and other farmers and stuff that gave us great tips along the way. And I'm not saying we're doing everything right yet, but we're certainly, we're getting there.
And in terms of doing everything right, can you talk us through some of the performance you're achieving? And maybe we'll talk through, a full year of 2017 maybe.
So 2017, I suppose, kilos of milk solids is what we're chasing here. We sold, still from a relatively young herd, 456 kilos of milk solids, which will be steadily growing since we started. That's the twice-day herd in Teagasc. So we've been pushing towards that. We can grow well over 15 ton of grass here. We have a good grass growing farm. So those are sort of the key performances we're heading for, is to grow lots of grass and get it out as kilos of milk solids.
And in terms of grass, you're saying you're growing a lot of grass, and Pasture Base has told us that we can grow as much grass in, say, the north of the country as the south. But a lot of people in the northern half of the country might talk about the challenges of utilising grass. So what are you doing to drive grass utilisation?
There's a couple of key factors from the utilisation side of things. I suppose when this farm was set up, it was set up as a 200 cow farm. Fortunately, we've got the opportunity to lease a couple of blocks of ground coming into us, and we've ran a slightly heavier stock system. So we have a 200 cow farm with plenty of roads, and it's now ended up in over 300 cow farm. So we have good road access to a lot of paddocks, which is a huge asset in the spring. So from an infrastructure point of view, we're pretty good, pretty strong. And then we work very hard, I suppose. We won't put the edge on it. We work hard in the spring to get grass utilised, on-off grazing from the first cow calved, or as early in February as we can. But I suppose the biggest thing with us, Emma-Louise, over the years is it's just the mental change, or the actual thinking that it can be done. Like giving grass a chance, so to speak. I've said it a couple of times. That just if you believe in the system that grass in the spring and that first round finished by whatever date suits your farm or whatever else, and getting your 30% done, your 60% done in time, if you believe in that system and work at it, then it's going to work. But if you start calving your cows in spring and already have yourself told that you're going to damage ground, or you don't want to let cows out, then you're fighting a losing battle before you even let a cow out the gate. Like you need to back the system through thick and thin, through that tough time in the spring, and then reassess what you did come May, June, or July. Have a look at grass growth for the spring, see the areas that you believed you poached then, have a look back and see what you did. But like, we would be continuously pushing the boundaries here every spring to get out earlier, to get out for longer, and to get more grass into the system. And it's solely because we believe that the system is working. The quality of grass we have come April and May outstrips the work or the commitment that we have to put in earlier on in the year. So you can have all the roadways you want, and you can have all the cows ready and the cows calved the right time of the year, but you just mentally need to be ready that the first opportunity that comes, once it stops raining or whatever, you walk your ground. And every farm is different. We're fortunate we have a good dry farm here in Roscommon, but every farm is different. That you're just ready to go, and you back the system.
And I suppose it's really what I'm getting from you. It's an attitude and having yourself in the right frame of mind and setting yourself up, prior to the spring to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Have your pigtails ready, have your reelers ready, have your couple of first paddocks, have them picked out early January before you get a couple of cows calved. Just like, it's not. It doesn't happen overnight. Like every year we're bringing back the date we let cows out, and we're getting more grass in the spring. Like you don't just all of a sudden become someone who lets cows out the 1st of February and keeps them out. That takes getting used to, and takes getting the skill set in place.
And in terms of utilisation, we talk about, say, hitting target numbers of grazings, and you're right up there. I saw from the Grass 10 booklet from your open day, you're achieving 10 grazings per year. Now the spring is one side of that, you're getting out early, but talk through the rest of the year. How are you achieving the 10?
Yeah, so I suppose I'd openly admit that maybe we were working so hard in the spring, we were nearly getting we were getting lazy, getting fatigued come into midsummer. We thought that all we had to do was just stay in a sort of middle and reasonable round, 18 to 21 days, and everything will be fine. But over the last couple of years, we're starting to focus now more on that area too. So we're trying to rob a half or another full grazing in that sort of May, June, July time, or June, July, August, in that we're trying to really get into a fast rotation there, be it 16 or 18 days. This farm here in this part of the country can grow, as like our farm in particular. Like once we get going in May and June, it really starts to kick off some grass. So we need to utilize that and really need to, act on that. So this year just gone now, 2018, we got down to our 14 or 16-day round for a month or a month and a half. And that was, that's really trying to get round. Now there's pros and cons to that, obviously, but that's the system that we're going to try and run here to get into a very fast round midsummer, to get more grazings off the farm and to get better quality grass into the cows consistently.
And then finally on the utilisation side of things, I think your stocking rate has a lot to do with it. You're running quite a high stocking rate on the milking platform.
Yep, we're sort of touching off that 4 mark. We're going to probably get up as far as it next year, all going well. It's always been the plan with this farm here. When we started out, it didn't lend itself well to cutting a lot of silage. It's quite rocky and quite stony and that. So we just decided that we were going to stock it quite heavily and bring a lot of the silage into the farm from surrounding lease blocks. And so we've driven the stocking rate up as a result of that. And in some ways it helps us. It helps us in the spring, and that we don't have to go out at night, probably for the first round. We can hit our targets by grazing during the day for that first round. And then during the summer, then when we want to get grass grazed, we have stock on hand during that very peak growth times. And I'm talking about May, June, July, August, where we're consistently hitting over 60 or maybe even over 8. Years like this obviously is an exception, but we're we're used to consistently hitting over 60 or 70 for those months, and with no variable or no risk factor there. Like we can get the moisture here, so we can guarantee grass into cows at a fairly high level for those 4 months, and we run a system where we have the cows ready to do that. It doesn't suit everyone, but it's the system we're running here.
And I guess, when you consider you're growing 15, 16 tons of grass consistently. Now, we mentioned this year is a slight exception. Growing that level of grass and, 80 kilograms for May, June, July, August, it's a very comfortable stocking rate to carry on the farm. You are supplementing with 850 kilos of concentrate. Now, for somebody who, really pushes the grass-based system, it does seem slightly high, but it's, I guess, a reflection of stocking rate. Have you any comment on concentrate levels?
Yeah, I suppose it's got to a system, like we keep a tight eye on what we feed the cows, but we that's a figure we calculate towards the end of the year. We don't run a tally during the year that we cannot cross X amount or we must be under, or we're beating ourselves with a stick. At the end of the year, for interest's sake, we calculate what we fed per cow. But whatever the cow needs to get during the year, she gets that. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. But again, we're in the part of the country where springs are tough and springs are wet. There needs to be a fair bit of concentrate put in. Obviously, people are going to argue if I held that lower stocking rates, then I could feed less. That's obvious. But then once we get into summer, I just don't want a system where we're cutting bales for 5 months of the year every week or every 10 days. So concentrates may be too high. But again, the system on that farm is in place and seems to be working quite well for us.
And the 850 kilos is, you mentioned the spring, there's a lot of feed going in. Is mid-season, is it completely cut?
No, it's for CalMag reasons only. We would suffer badly if we cut meal out here completely. We'd have to put CalMag in. We've tried other systems or whatever, but just for economics and for ease of work and for whatever else, we do keep a minimum feeding rate for CalMag all summer.
Okay, and then you're back in then in the autumn to stretch out the feed.
We would feed more. We would go more towards surplus bales in the autumn rather than upping meal levels. And in order to try and keep that down. But in the spring, we try to buffer as much as we can with fairly high levels of meal. I say high, we go to 4 or 5 kilos. We would rarely go over 4.5 or 5 kilos. And then in the back end, we would rarely go over 3.
And I suppose then if we consider cow type, what did you start off with those original 140 heifers?
Yeah, so in 2009, we bought most of those heifers as calves in order to rear them on the farm and calve them in 11. And we pretty much bought everything that was available at the time. We had advice from Teagasc to try and buy high EBI if we could, and we did. We chased EBI best we could, but we bought anything from a high-yielding Holstein down to a crossbred. And so we had a fairly mixed bag of a herd, let's say, for the first couple of years. And then through milk recording and through whatever else, we picked out good cows. We were selectively breeding with beef for a couple of years on some of our poorer cows, but we've always bred with high EBI black and whites. In recent years, we're going a little bit more towards using some more crossbreds since the herd size is growing. But EBI has done us no wrong since we started, and we would back that system wholly.
And you're talking about the growing herd size is leading you to lean towards the crossbreds a little bit. Can you explain what your reason is behind that?
So I say to anyone or any group that comes in, I suppose if I had a smaller herd number, maybe under 200, I would probably be leaning towards more of a high EBI herd. Maybe that's just a preference for the type of cow. Even coming from a suckler background, it's just a type of cow maybe we'd be used to looking at or more keen on. But now that the herd size is growing, it just seems to make more sense to run a more herd management system instead of an individual cow management system. So with that in mind, either a very a high maintenance figure EBI, which is a very good cow, or a crossbred. That's sort of where the herd is going now. We're looking more towards that maintenance figure in EBI. And
then to reflect based on the cow type and your feeding system, you mentioned you're producing about 456 kilos of solids per cow last year, which is just shy of 1,700 kilograms of milk solids per hectare. So that's a very, very high level of production. And based on the feeding level is very average, when we consider what's happening nationally. You're setting out ambitious targets to produce say 200 or 2,000 kilograms of solids per hectare. How are you going to achieve that?
I suppose there's 3 or 4 main areas there. There's obviously breeding to continue to improve the herd, what solids it can throw, like percentages they can throw off. Grassland management is still room for improvement there. The whole farm is reseeded. That's probably another area. And then, like, we have compact calving. There's areas there where there can be more kilos of milk solids. And like I said, we will increase the stocking rate slightly, so it will be a fraction of a cow more per hectare. But those are the main areas we're focusing on to try and hit that 2K mark per hectare. And look, I'm not saying I haven't done it, obviously, and until I've done it, I can't say it's achievable. But it's definitely a target that I see is a realistic target, let's put it that way.
And I suppose just to pick up then in terms of just the per cow performance, you mentioned the herd is still growing in terms of maturity. What age is the herd?
Last year we were averaging 2.7 lactations, and that would probably have been the oldest herd we've milked to date. Now we're back. We have 60% of the herd milking this year as heifers, so we've taken another whop from that point of view. So it's just like, and our cull rate would be quite acceptable. It'd be under 20, etc. But it's just the expansion mode is drawing us to bring in a lot of heifers every year, and that is really a drain on performance per cow.
Yeah, and I guess, as the herd matures, you would expect the solids per cow is going to also increase.
Absolutely. Yeah. So last year was the highest kilos of milk solids per cow we've sold, and it's the oldest herd we've had. So
that's it for part 1 of my interview with Ed Payne. Tune in next week when Ed gives us his top tips for managing labour. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple and Google Podcasts, and for more information go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Emma-Louise Coffey, and join me next time for your Dairy Edge.